Don't tell me how much money you have. I want to know what kind of human being you are. All the sacrifice that I made for you. Are you going to feel my legacy through you? The best of who I was through you. That's the fundamental question. That's what courage in part is all about. You can't talk about evil, unjustified suffering, unmerited pain, unwarranted grief, unless you talk about courage. And part of our problem these days is we have a significant decline in courage. We don't have enough people defining who they are as human beings and thereby willing to speak a truth that allows suffering to speak, including their own suffering and the suffering of others, and allowing that kind of language to become more and more pervasive. I'm not just talking about right-wing brothers and sisters. I'm not just talking about Brother Sean Anthony and Brother Glenn Beck, even though it's easy to talk about those brothers. But it's clear they have trouble allowing love to flow outside of their souls in such a way that it spills over to Chocolate City. It's clear. Brother Glenn said, I'm the Martin Luther King Jr. No, brother, you don't have enough love. Get out of the way. Martin had love. That's no plaything. And he began on the chocolate side of town. Nothing wrong with that. You started loving your mama first. Got too many black people love everybody but Negroes. Tell me how much you love her. Susan McGillicuddy. How much do you love Letitia first? We can get to Susan, it spills over. But it's got to start at home. It's got to start in your own roots. If your roots are not strong, then the route, R-O-U-T-E-S, that you take are going to be highly twisted. Because you're going to be headed just toward success, headed toward the easy option, headed toward complacency, headed toward apathy. But if your roots are strong, then that love is going to spill over to brown brothers and sisters and yellow and red and white across the board. But it has to be rooted. And the only way we have more courage in our society is more examples. This has been the history of black people, working people, the history of women, the history of all those human beings who have been spit on, the history of gay brothers like James Baldwin, lesbian sisters like Audre Lorde. Courage. So many times we tell our young folk, you just can't wait until you become the grand successful one. And we want you to be successful. And the young folk here at Wayne State University, I want you to be disciplined. I want you to read voraciously, read broadly, read Shakespeare, read Dante, read Dostoevsky, read Toni Morrison, read James Baldwin, read Ivan Turgenev, read Thomas Pynchon, read Plato, read Aquinas, read Hume, read Descartes, and then listen to some Coltrane. But that's not enough. It's not enough. Socrates himself, who raised the most fundamental question about what it means to be human, led toward his death, the drinking of the hemlock, because of what? Because of what he called his fearless speech, intimidated speech. Line 24a of Plato's Apology. It has been fearless speech is the cause of my unpopularity, led toward his death. He was courageous. One thing Socrates did not have. Something that I do not want students here at Wayne State to imitate Socrates. Socrates is worthy of imitation in so many ways. Socrates never wrote a word. I don't want students at Wayne State to follow Socrates in that regard. You got to not just read, you got to write. Write well. Strong arguments. Sophisticated formulations. But even more, black folk understand this so well, but all human beings of great sensitivity understand this. Socrates never, ever cried. He never sheds a tear. The reputation we have of Socrates, Plato's dialogue, Xenophon's dialogue, Aristophanes is the clouds. Satirical depiction of Socrates, he never ever showed shedding a tear. Anyone who has never ever cried has never loved. And if you've never loved, you've never really lived. You just existed. You just passed through space and time. Socrates was obsessed with self-mastery and self-control. At your mama's funeral, self-mastery and self-control are not appropriate. Because the love flows. Not just mama, it could be daddy, it could be a loved one. So the challenge is going to be, how then do we attempt to connect the courage to think critically for ourselves with the courage to love? And we don't like to talk about love because it's been so commodified by so many Hollywood movies. Speaking of a lot of prisons, junior highs and high schools these days are shifting very much from colleges to high school and junior high, because I want to touch these young folk very early. Very early. I spend time in the prisons because the prisons provide an angle to look at America that's rare in the mainstream. People say, oh, we don't have money. We don't have money. You just had a penal Marshall Plan where you paid $300 billion for prisons. In the last 25 years, you found money for prisons, didn't you? But you can't find money to have some textbooks and furniture in the school for the children, I see. You got to look at the priorities. You don't have money when you're spending all that money in Afghanistan and Iraq. Don't tell me you don't have money when you find money for the Pentagon. You have a different viewpoint. But when you look at America from the vantage point of the least of these, all of a sudden you see how twisted the priorities are. That's why you can find billions of dollars for investment bankers, but don't want to treat poor people with the same dignity and support. Something's wrong with the priorities. When it comes back down to, who do you love? Because if you love folk, you can't stand the fact that they're treated unfairly. You hate the fact that they're being treated unjustly. You have priorities that are different. When you love folk, they have major priorities. When you love folk, you know they're in a state of emergency. You have a sense of urgency when you go to these chocolate cities and see all of this suffering and trouble. But if you just look out the window and don't see them, then you don't think there's a real crisis until Wall Street collapses. Then all of a sudden, everybody talking about catastrophe. You haven't seen the catastrophe, the chocolate slices of Detroit? You haven't seen the catastrophe before Katrina hit in New Orleans? You haven't seen the catastrophe in the south side of Chicago? What lens are you looking through? What viewpoint do you really have? So the issue of acknowledging the need for Socratic energy, critical reflection, analysis, understanding where so much of the power is. Why is it that Wall Street oligarchs can call for unbelievable recovery and it takes place in 1 year and say the recession is over, and yet the unemployment rate is still escalating exponentially? What do you define a recovery to be? Oh, it's for you and your partner. I see. Why don't you say that on television? Recovery has set in for the well-to-do and their friends.